The next thing on the agenda here for me to talk about with some pleasure, I must say, is to recognize our cadets, the California Maritime Academy cadets that are here, the young men and women that are in uniform and that have been assisting out on the front desk. Had to compete to get here today. They went through a scholarship process and were selected from among their peers to visit with us. And this is being done this year under a memorial scholarship that's been established to recognize the Dr. Lee Kirshner, who many of you may remember. We certainly do at the Maritime Academy. He was a tremendous supporter. We unfortunately lost him this last year. But the scholarship has been established by the leadership here at the Symposium to provide a mechanism to actually bring some of our undergraduates and graduate students to this event. Dr. Kirshner was a personal mentor to me, very strong supporter of maritime, all things good movements associated. And those of us who knew him well certainly continue to miss him. So we're hopeful that this will continue to honor his memory. So let's give a round of applause for our cadets who are with us today. And I have a mission of instruction for the cadets. This is your opportunity to mingle and meet some of the folks that potentially can enhance your career opportunities later on. So please take advantage of that aspect. Our keynote speaker this morning is Betty T. Yee, member of the State Board of Equalization for the 1st District. Betty Yee represents the 21 counties in Northern and Central California, including the entire San Francisco Bay Area. Ms. Yee has over 29 years of experience in public service, specializing in state and local finance. Ms. Yee previously served as the Chief Deputy Director for Budget with the California Department of Finance, where she led the development of the governor's budget, negotiations with the legislature, and key budget stakeholders, the fiscal analysis of legislation on behalf of the administration. Prior to this, she served in both senior staff positions for several fiscal and policy committees in both houses of the California State Legislature. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome this morning to Ms. Yee.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And I also want to add my sentiments in honor of Lee Kirshner, who was a former colleague and probably someone who was the strongest advocate for maritime studies as well as just for the California State University system. So very, very honored that you will be hopefully continuing on his legacy. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and welcome to the cadets as well. I first of all need to ask you, how many of you know what the State Board of Equalization really is? Oh, good, more than usually. I'm thrilled. It has become a little less obscure over the years, certainly with our state budget situation being as challenging as it's been, but certainly turning a corner now with respect to what the voters had approved last November with temporary tax increases. But we are one of 3 state tax agencies that has jurisdiction over a number of different tax and fee programs. We have the Employment Development Department, many of you know, which is the agency that oversees employment taxes. We have the Franchise Tax Board that oversees income taxes, both personal and corporate and franchise income tax. And then the State Board of Equalization, which is what I call the kitchen sink of tax agencies. We take care of everything else. Excise taxes, special environmental fees, and the like, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of those are. But I'm pleased to address you this morning because many of you in working in this discipline, I'm sure, have experienced lots of frustration, certainly with the rise and fall of our economic fortunes here in California. And as we look at what the state of affairs is with respect to California's economy, I can't say enough about how much our maritime transportation system, if any time was a time to really look at how we ought to be investing in the system, it ought to be now. When we look at the global economic challenges that we face, when we look at some of the added demands on our maritime transportation system that we face, and as we look at, obviously, the aging infrastructure of our maritime transportation system, this is where we need to be making investment, because it will have more reverberating effects than just what's happening here in California. And when we look at some of the priorities that the legislature will be funding, because we are going to be on paper, and I say that on paper, in a budget surplus situation for the next handful of years, I think now is the time to elevate, looking at California reinvesting in some of our key infrastructure needs, and I can't think of a more key infrastructure need than our maritime transportation system. It is one where, as we look at how we handle all of the increased demands on this system, we need to put some money in there. Now, there's going to be a lot of debate about what we do with our added newfound fortunes in our state coffers. And I say on paper because we still have a lot of risks with respect to unfunded obligations in our state budget. You're reading about some of them in the paper, including our unfunded liability with the California State Teachers Retirement System. But there are one-time revenues that are so ripe for infrastructure investment that I do think that if California is going to be promoting itself as a global economy, then we better start acting like one and make the rightful investments in our maritime transportation system. Now, all of you know, more so than I think many policymakers up here, the daily stresses that are placed on this system. And I, for one, just drove up from Alameda this morning, and if there were a ferry to transport me up here, I'd have taken the ferry. It is beyond me as to why the more lanes we put on our freeways, we still have congestion. But certainly as we look at our global economy, the fact that California still continues to be a very, very prominent trading partner with many of our global neighbors, we are going to see more stresses with respect to exports and imports and larger cargo capacity that's required and bigger, larger ships that are coming into our ports. And all of that comes with other demands as well, including being sure that we have an adequately trained workforce to accommodate all of these new demands. We also have large environmental mandates that continue to be I think good things that we want to pursue, but add costs to the cost of doing business and also add potential stress on our maritime transportation system. The fact that we are looking at heightened security every single day with respect to our ports and our maritime transportation system, every single aspect of the continuum of the system, also will mean that we will have additional demands on the system as well. Now, the State Board of Equalization has had some input with respect to how we are going to keep our marine transportation system safe, how we're going to keep it environmentally safe, and also are in charge of working with many of our environmental agencies here in California in implementing certain taxes and fees. And I'll just give you an example of some of them, and just keep them in the back of your mind, because in my mind, although these are great revenue sources to deal with specific concerns, they also are added costs when you look at how we continue to have all of the players do business related to our system. So the board administers the private railroad car tax, and it is what's taxed is the assessed value of private rail cars that are operating within California. And we have about 225 private railroad owners who pay the tax, and it generates only about $7.9 million. Now, those of you who are in the rail business or know the rail business, woefully underfunded with respect to infrastructure upgrades. And it's really one of the greatest challenges as I look at the Port of Oakland in my home county. And really as we look at how we're going to get goods to market as we accept cargo containers, we need to really start to see whether there are opportunities with our newfound riches to make an investment in our decaying rail system. We also administer the diesel fuel tax program, and this is diesel fuel tax upon distribution or importation into the state or sale. And it's who pays this are the suppliers of diesel fuel. There are about 246 of those that we tax, and then other accounts about 30,000 that we tax. The tax rate's about 10 cents per gallon, and we generate about $327 million from the diesel fuel tax. And the funds are used for highway improvements and maintaining our public roads and mass transit systems. With respect to marine-related fees, we administer the marine invasive species fee, and this is imposed on ships with ballast water entering California from outside a defined coastal zone. We have who pays this are owners and registrants of vessels entering into California ports, and right now we just have right around under 5,000 registrants who pay this fee. The tax rate is $850 per qualifying vessel voyage, and it generates about $4.5 million. And the funds are used for invasive species control, and it supports a program that addresses the introduction of non-invasive species, aquatic species into the state's waters. We also administer the oil spill prevention and administration fee, obviously taxed upon crude oil and petroleum products received at maritime terminals in California, and this generates about $31.3 million into the state coffers for the purpose of dealing with oil spill prevention and also mitigation. So we have in California the wonderful aspect of our economy, and that is the diversity of our economy. Many of the states around this country really reeled during the Great Recession, as did California, primarily from the mortgage crisis. But we stayed strong because of our tremendous economic diversity. The leading sectors that we have here really fall into categories that I think are unique to California: high-tech, biotech, agriculture, certainly not unique to California, but very much in demand around the world, manufacturing, and of course more domestic sectors of tourism and entertainment. Now, foreign investment, California continues to be the #1 state in attracting foreign direct investment. And in 2013, Governor Brown continued on this path, led a trade mission to China, and announced over $1.8 billion in deals, and opened a California Foreign Trade Office in Shanghai, the first of these that we've opened in over a decade. So there will be more of this to come. And also in the board working closely with the Governor's GOBIZ office, really looking for different ways that we are going to develop binational business models. So in other words, really with technology now, we can do business anywhere, but because we have such a diverse business sector and have business owners and operators of companies large and small that have natural customers in their home country, we're looking at how we're going to build a new kind of binational business model. We also have in California in 2013, we actually added about 226 jobs in California. Now, just a statement about that. Although we've added jobs, many of these jobs have not been sustained permanent jobs. And so even though our job growth is up, much of that job growth is in temporary and part-time help. And that's why you still see the unemployment rate hovering at a pretty high rate above the national rate. Our GDP growth in 2012 was the 5th best in the nation, and California had the 6th largest growing economy in the world. And this is based on figures by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. Our major areas of growth, 4 of the top 20 U.S. regions for job growth were right here in California. And not a coincidence, 3 of them are in cities that have vital ports: Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Francisco, Oakland, and the San Diego region. And when we look at these major areas of growth, some of the economic sectors that I mentioned earlier are very, very prominent in each of these areas. Now, when we look at maritime activity and what we see, what we are predicting is that we are going to see steady increases in imports this year. And I know the National Retail Federation has their eyes on around a 3% increase with respect to the rise in cargo container volumes, and only to see that continue to grow, albeit slow. Now, in the Los Angeles area, The volumes have actually shown the 3% increase in cargo container volume. And last year, the Port of Long Beach had its third busiest year with 6.7 million 20-foot containers that were coming through its docks. So the banner years were obviously prior to the Great Recession. We haven't returned to those levels yet, but we're hopeful that as the economy picks up, that we will be back to those levels. Now, there's been a little bit of discussion here in California with respect to what the Panama Canal expansion will mean for ports here in California. Obviously, new locks and a deeper channel can accommodate much larger ships, and what we think will be the case is that manufacturers moving goods from Asia to the United States will be able to cut their transportation costs as much as 30% by sending bigger ships through the Panama Canal. And and we do think that California ports will see some dramatic impact related to that. Now, again, is that a reason not to reinvest in our port infrastructure? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. California ports, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, I would say actually all of the West Coast ports, including Seattle, this is the time as we are able to really begin to shore up not just the port infrastructure, but also the attendant rail transport and other infrastructure around there. Now, you're going to be talking a lot today about what is in store for the future and some of the ongoing challenges. With respect to West Coast ports, we are watchful that the International Longshore and Warehouse Union will be able to negotiate an agreement for its members so that we can avoid a possible strike. And as we know, as negotiations turn sour, as they did back in 2002 and in 2008, there can be significant delays in container movement. And the reputation of West Coast ports, I think, could really suffer a blow if we're not able to get our arms around an agreement with the Longshore and Warehouse Union. We are going to continue our fight for our market share in the Asia-Pacific trade. But labor stability is obviously one of the key factors in our ability to be competitive in that regard. Productivity challenges. A lot will also depend on our, hopefully, increased demand for California products from our trading partners across the globe. Agriculture continues to be strong in terms of Asia demands for California agricultural products, but all of this is like unraveling layers of an onion. We're facing a drought here in California, and we are still trying to assess what the potential effects will be, particularly to our agricultural sector, that will have severe reductions in their water supplies. And so how that will affect the production of agricultural crops, agricultural commodities that are exported to other parts of the world still remains to be seen. So the drought will definitely have its impact with respect to that particular sector of the economy. We are also seeing here expanding ports in our neighboring countries, in Mexico and in Canada. Obviously, will have an impact with respect to our ports here in California and in the United States, throughout the United States. We have seen also new Asia to East Coast services via the Suez Canal. And so we really are in the throes of a global economy, a global infrastructure. And as I mentioned earlier, with all of you in the discipline that you're in, please elevate your voices to let our policymakers know now is the time to reinvest in our maritime transportation system. And not just for the purpose of our global economy and how we can continue to be a good global partner to our neighbors around the world, but also as we look at stresses here domestically. I was joking a little bit about my commute up here, but as we look at alternatives to how we're going to deal with our population growth, our congestion on our highways, I think ferry passenger service is definitely going to be on the radar of many areas of the state. And so that will be another added stress with respect to the maritime transportation system. I want to just conclude by saying a few words about what I see as some emerging issues that may make lobbying for this much more critical. So we talked about the improvements to the Panama Canal, certainly the prominence of the Suez Canal. The federal government, frankly, in terms of funding, has been woefully inadequate. We all know that. And California, frankly, hasn't done enough. We have had certainly the smaller port districts and really make do with respect to its own revenue sources for much more localized needs and regional needs. But in terms of our prominence in the global economy, now really is the time. We can make the economic case for this. And it's no great big secret when we talk about how we're going to turn this economy around. It's about creating jobs. And the jobs that are created by the maritime sector of our economy are some of the greatest paying jobs. And for the cadets in this room, this is a great discipline to be in. And oftentimes when we think about how are we going to get out of this great recession, how are we going to sustain economic recovery, I think we know how to do it. It's how the state has been built. We invest in those areas that are important. We invest in public education. We invest in our infrastructure. We invest in really trying to cultivate and develop the workforce that's going to be needed for the new demands of our economy. And instead of exporting our talent, we hope to be able to keep them here, which means we want to be sure that our universities and our maritime academies are really the ones that are getting resources to train our Californians, our young Californians, and that they remain here in the state and become part of our vibrant workforce. We want to be sure that as we invest in infrastructure, that we can definitely make that economic case. Now, oftentimes in this particular arena, when we talk about the maritime transportation system, we're up against a lot of environmental challenges, and those are real. But I do think that when you look at the options that are available for how we move people, how we move goods, that when we look at our maritime transportation system, it actually has the potential to be the greenest option for how we do that. And so a lot of different arguments for how we make the economic case, how we make the environmental case, but we can do it. And now is the time to do it. And so I hope that as you are hearing from policymakers today and as you leave today, that you can be of a unified voice in terms of let's start really acting the part and really putting our money behind, putting our money where our mouth is in terms of investing to be really the global partner that we can be, investing to be supporting the global economy that we are, and investing so that as global neighbors around the world depend on California, we can deliver. And we can deliver at the lowest cost, we can deliver with safe environmental standards, and we can deliver with a trained, high-quality workforce that is going to sustain this economy and this transportation system for many generations to come. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Yes. Sabran, you want to manage the mic there? Thank you, sir.
Morning, Betty.
Good morning.
You do a great job in the public policy arena. Could you please let people know what your possible future plans are and how you could help enhance our economy?
Thank you, John. Good to see you. I have been very proud to have served on the State Board of Equalization since 2004, and my interest, frankly, in the maritime transportation system not only stems from the fact that I'm a native San Franciscan, but also I am a candidate for state controller and will be a member of the State Lands Commission as controller. So very much will maintain the interest and certainly hope to be a vocal advocate with respect to some of this infrastructure investment that we've been talking about. Thank you, John.
Good morning, and thank
Good
you
morning.
for recognizing the importance of the maritime industry for the state. I was curious if you can give some specifics about what sort of investments the state of California is actually going to be making in the ports and the maritime from a capital perspective or otherwise?
Yeah. Yeah, much of it has been not direct investment, certainly not from the State General Fund. But what we have been doing, and particularly through the Treasurer's Office, is looking at where there are opportunities through some of the various financing authorities, particularly for pollution control types of measures. There are, I would say, other financing authorities that we've not really fully, I think, leveraged. That could be helpful for the maritime industry. And I will actually have a seat on many of those financing authorities. And one of the things we did, many of you remember when President Obama first took office, he signed a significant federal stimulus bill that brought billions into California. And instead of actually leveraging those funds through these various financing authorities, we used it to plug budget holes. And probably the worst expenditure of funds I've ever seen. We never really looked at our priority needs, and when that kind of money comes in, you really want to look at, where are some of those investments that we can make that will have a sustaining impact. So we likely won't get that kind of share of federal funds again, but to the extent that we do, or other bond funds or other types of revenue that come into these financing authorities, that's where we ought to be looking at providing some capital for the maritime system. Good morning.
I don't think, oh, there we go. You mentioned that California hasn't done enough. Beyond the financing, do you see some other things that we should be doing that might not be obvious to us?
I think all of this really relates to how do we operate a maritime system that obviously is keeping up with all of the different mandates. And so there's a lot happening on the cost side, not a whole lot happening on the revenue side. And so I think one of the ways that we can also be helpful, and we can definitely be partners, is as we look at some of these environmental mandates, how can we help ease some of that burden? And that's not to say, getting out from under them, but are there ways, whether it's financing, whether it's relaxing some of the rules or deadlines to meet certain types of mandates, but those are the kinds of things that I think can be helpful as we look at other demands that are being placed on the system. Okay.
Any other questions?
Lots of food for thought.
That's your chance.
And please feel free to reach out. I obviously don't do my work in a vacuum, and those of you who face these issues every day, you help better inform the decisions that I have the opportunity to make in my respective roles. So I really appreciate the opportunity to address all of you this morning. Thank you very much.
Well, that was a terrific way to open our presentations today. Thought that was extremely informative, insightful, and somewhat refreshing, actually, in terms of getting the straight scoop on what we're doing.